Hey, everybody, welcome to Project Geospatial and another episode of the industry Limelight. And here with me on this episode, diving into another company, is Arlula and Sebastian Chowie. Sebastian, tell me who you are and what Arlula is, and we'll just get right into it.
Hi, Adam. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. My name's Sebastian. Run a company called Arlula from Sydney, Australia, and we're basically a streaming platform for planetary data, specifically satellite imagery. And what we've realized is that over the last couple of years, been this huge adoption of commercial usage for satellite data, satellite imagery as well. And the problems here, though, are the fact that you can't really access satellite imagery at scale. We're starting to see a lot of people building out new applications. We're moving away a lot from specific uses in projects for satellite imagery, and we're moving more towards people building applications that require scalable access to satellite imagery in order to deliver insights to customers. And there isn't really a technology platform that allows people to seamlessly access satellite imagery at scale, high resolution from multiple vendors. There's not really, I guess like API tech in the EO space is still very limited and new. And the business and legal hurdles around accessing satellite imagery are really complex, and if you're a new developer or if you're someone from outside the industry that's looking in and seeing how they could potentially utilize this new technology and data, it's such a headache, and you see a lot of startups that get funded spend a lot of their funding and a lot of their time just overcoming this basic hurdle, which is access to the data, negotiating these complex agreements before they even start to, deliver those insights that they told investors that they'd be able to deliver to their customers. So, it's this interesting challenge that we noticed in Arlula, or we noticed in the industry as Arlula, and I guess this is sort of the thing that we're solving.
Excellent. Well, before we dive more into the company itself, tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved with the geospatial industry and in the business of selling and innovating imagery.
Yeah, no. So I'm a space guy. Ever since uni, I've been working on different space projects. This is my second space startup company. The first company I started was back when I was 22. It was called CubeWriter, and it was an ed tech company, and we basically helped Australian high school students send experiments to the International Space Station with NASA. It was a pretty fun thing to do. We were the first Aussies to ever send or run a mission on the ISS, which is kind of fun. But what I realized from that experience was that there are a lot of assets in orbit that were just completely underutilized. From my perspective, anyway, we looked at all of this technology that we were sending into space. We looked at all of this capability, and it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to send stuff up, and then hundreds of millions of dollars more just to operate it for its lifespan. And you weren't getting this, this proper utilization or proper monetization of these assets. And so from there, we looked at the EO industry in particular, and we saw the fact that it was like exploding. There were a lot of companies, a lot of startups launching stuff to space, or Earth observation satellites. You had the planets, obviously, but then now you've got Axel Space and Satellogic and all these new companies. And it was just such an exciting industry. And so off the back of CubeWriter, Arlula formed. And yeah, that's sort of, I guess, how I got into this and sort of what's been happening. But it really came from this sort of idea that we need to start commercializing these assets in space. I think in order to really push the boundaries and I guess move with the space industry, we need to start figuring out how we can get people here on Earth to benefit from the technology we're sending up. And I think for the longest time, it's been mainly being consumed. This technology is mainly being consumed by government defense organizations around the world, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think we're at this tipping point now, which is super exciting. We're at this tipping point where I guess more people are being able to start to access geospatial technologies in particular, like satellite imagery, at scale to build these new applications and to create these new ideas that are fundamentally transforming almost every industry on the planet at this point. So Yeah, I guess that's sort of how we kind of started this out, and my thinking behind it as well, and I guess a bit of my background.
That's great. That's so you already have a heads up into the satellite industry. So and that makes what you're doing even more relevant as you already got a heads up into the needs of we'll call needs of developers out there who are trying to access imagery. And tell me some of the struggles that have kickstarted some of the endeavors, because it's not just all about the API. It's not just about access to the imagery. It's about this changing and evolving business model by industry as well, right?
Oh, 100%. It's really interesting, right? Because we're getting all of these new players entering the game, all these new satellite imagery operators or imaging sat operators. And you talk to these guys, the incumbents, and you talk to the new guys, and the attitudes are so different, right? On the one hand, you've got the guys that have been there for many years, like Maxar, Airbus, and Planet, and they're doing an amazing job. They've got this amazing business model that they're really killing it. And on the other hand, you've got these new entrants. Like some of them I've already mentioned, like Satellogic, Axel Space, Albedo, I think, is another company that's not launching yet, but will be soon. LabConnect 60, we work with them as well, out of Australia, and so you've got this very, very rich and diverse ecosystem of new satellite operators, and then you've got this other aspect where corporates are starting to lean in, and you've got people or these corporate organizations, these enterprise level companies starting to consider launching their own EO platforms, which is it was completely unheard of, like 10, 15 years ago. I think the biggest one that I can think of right now, I think it's called, I'm probably gonna get the name wrong, but I think it's like Climacell or something, they're launching, they were a weather company, and then they decided to launch their own Earth observation satellites for weather data. And so you've got these companies, what I'm trying to say is you've got these companies leaning in, and you're creating a much more diverse and rich ecosystem. And then you've got these government organizations as well, which again, very different beast, but also they're starting to look now, like the Australian Space Agency, for instance, they're starting to look at how you can commercialize technology, and they're really focusing on space tech from a commercial angle rather than to be in space for necessarily any other reason. And so because of that, you've got these really pragmatic governments launching imaging assets, and they're saying, well, how can it benefit our community? How can it benefit our region? And how can we potentially commercialize this technology? And so everyone's talking about it. Everyone wants to do it. Everyone's doing it. But now you've created a crowded market. You've created a market that's really difficult to access for new players. And it's a very complex system because you're dealing with a complex product, right? Satellite imagery is inherently, it's data that's very complex. And so what we're seeing is this need for new entrants to start figuring out how to be competitive against the incumbents. And instead of trying to launch an optical imager that's maybe 5% better or has a GSD of 30 centimeters or something like that, they're looking at how they can innovate on the legal and the business model front, and the user experience front as well. And so this is sort of where Arlula comes in as well, because we've had these conversations with these companies and these organizations, and they're all saying, similar things like, how do we innovate? How do we start to grab market share globally? How do we start to do this kind of stuff? And it's we tell them it's all the same thing. It's okay, you need to be innovating here, right? Don't worry about the satellite so much. Almost the satellite's just a one piece of the puzzle, and the ecosystem is so complex, so rich, and so diverse that there's plenty of opportunities for you to I guess get customer share and market share by innovating in different ways. And so the conversations we're having around that are really interesting. And a lot of people are starting to wake up to this, like, hey, we need to change the way we distribute this data. We need to change the way allow our customers or the consumers of data to provide insights to their end users. And I think we're really at the coalface with this as well as a company, and so it's really great to see attitudes changing as well. Yeah, it's really, really exciting.
Absolutely. So, and part of that, so tell me what's unique about your infrastructure, right? Giving people access to imagery. What does that mean? What does that mean for developers? What does that mean beyond your typical reseller out there?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So we actually started as a reseller in Australia. So we went to SI Imaging, and they're a South Korean satellite imager, and we spoke with them and we just said, look, your satellites, your CompSat series of satellites aren't necessarily being utilized or monetized in Australia. It's a giant continent, right? And there's plenty of opportunity. And so that's how we got our first break, really, is we were able to start to convince some of these incumbent satellite operators, people that have been doing it for a couple of years now, to give us a go inside of Australia. And then from there, we started actually figuring out how or why people use satellite data day to day, and how organizations and how trends are changing as well, with the consumption and use of this kind of data. And we learned that one of the big problems is people want affordable access to archive imagery, but the 25 square kilometer minimums, the fact that no commercial satellite operator has a complete archive, right? That just doesn't exist. And so being able to, that's sort of when we got to this point where we realized maybe we need to start aggregating satellite imagery together or satellite imagery archives together as well. And so we started signing up other suppliers, different companies. We're working with Maxar now and a few others. And we started to build what we call like a dynamic and robust imagery archive. And the ultimate aim would be for us to have so many image archives in our system that it's almost like tasking. You could basically get the latest image, and that the latest image is maybe from yesterday. And I think that's going to happen as more satellites are launched, more companies, more organizations start to collect data. But that's sort of, I guess, how it started. And what it evolved into was, or how it evolved into what it is today, is through like a series of really key discussions with some of our early customers who really loved the aggregation play. They thought it was important because even just negotiating one commercial agreement with one satellite operator can take months. It's pretty difficult. It's not like an easy thing to do. And if you're new as well, if you've never used satellite imagery before, it's just this thing that completely repels you. You don't want to use it. You'll find a substitute. You'll hire a drone. You'll go to an aerial imaging company or something else, right? IoT. And so because of that, it means that it's really hard to get new entrants interested in accessing this kind of data. And so the whole mantra from that point on was just simplification of access. And that really is the user experience. And so one of our key customers basically told us, look, you need to build it into an API. If you're serious about getting application developers using this, well, it needs to be consumable in an easy way. No more manual. Everything has to be fully automated. And then we had a bunch of customers start to tell us this. It was almost like as soon as one started telling us this, everyone else started to as well at the same time. It was really strange. And that's sort of what led us down this path where we're like, okay, well, we'll build the API. And that will be able to power a whole bunch of different applications and use cases, either internally for Arlula or externally for our customers as well. We just felt this automation infrastructure needed to exist. It exists in almost every other industry, really well, really robust as well. It's just in the EO space, it doesn't. And it's really strange because you're just dealing with data. You're not dealing with anything else. It's just all data. Why aren't we using APIs or some other kind of technology to automate this process? And so, all of our customers were sick and tired of dealing with FTPs and download links and endless emails and stuff like that. And
well, it's not so API access doesn't just enable the ease of access without going through this kind of order form setup that you traditionally have to go through, but it also is that is the timely approach, right? How fast can you expect a customer to get imagery through your API?
Well, it depends on the imagery you're ordering, the product you're ordering, but anywhere from a couple of hours to instant. We have direct access to Landsat and Sentinel data hubs, so that's obviously instant. We work with suppliers now, and something I'd be keen to talk about a bit later. But we're working with certain suppliers now to do direct access. So instant, but within the hour essentially is sort of the latest we'd allow it. So that's very exciting in terms of delivery times. The dream is to basically to be able to order a single pixel of satellite data or any kind of pixel you needed and have it instantly delivered into your cloud computing service, say if it's Azure, AWS, or Google, or Esri or ArcGIS platform or something like that. Just have it seamlessly integrated and delivered there. That's the experience we're trying to build at the moment. And so, the line that we use is, I guess, we reduce the time it takes to access or order and retrieve satellite imagery from about 2 weeks if you're doing the traditional order form process with a reseller. That takes, hi, I want an image. Great. Okay, well, here's a quote. Here's some images you want. Maybe they're from 2 different suppliers or something like that. And this whole process takes days, right? And with us, it can be as quick as 2 hours is sort of the line. So 2 weeks to 2 hours kind of thing, and we're trying to reduce that time even more. And so from that perspective, where we realize that automation is really key, because there's just too much of the human in the loop, right? You've got too many people trying to provide or having to provide services in order to procure satellite imagery, and you can't build a business out of that, really, or you can't build a modern business out of that, I'd say. What you really want is you want to be able to automate everything. You want to be able to have a really simple ingestion workflow and have your processing algorithm do most of the work. And so and traditionally, again, I mentioned this before, but like most companies that are emerging today that are trying to do this, well, they're having to build all this infrastructure themselves, which is a huge time sink. And so I think part of the value of Arlula is just that the fact that it exists and the automation technology that we've developed is really, really helping just speed up how you access the data.
All right, so you mentioned FTP before as a lot of traditional delivery methods. So part of it is, are you connecting your ordering delivery methods to perhaps companies' internal cloud infrastructure or cloud environments that exist out there right now, whether it be Amazon, Google, or Microsoft Azure, that type of thing? Are you when you talk about the whole integrate that within a customer's existing application, that's part of the automation too, right?
100%. So when we started to work with these satellite operators, it requires they've all got different products, different services, different ways of doing things. So part of it is standardizing that approach, right? And so if you have to build a different integration pipeline to one satellite operator versus another, that's really, really, it becomes timely and costly and very complex. What we've had to do is we've had to sort of take on that job, right? So we, depending on the level of technological automation and sophistication that the supplier has, will sort of mean will dictate sort of how far we have to integrate into their systems, right? And so it's all varying across suppliers, right? So some of our suppliers, we completely manage the data for them. So all the data that they collect from space, we manage it, we pre-process it, we distribute it using our API infrastructure. And then some suppliers, they've already got an API up, and we're just ordering through that. And then some suppliers, it's still slightly manual as well, so it hits sort of like this manual wall on their end. So really, it's a bunch of different technologies that we're stringing together. You could liken it almost to like Twilio or Stripe. In the fact that the way that they built their applications and their platforms is that they had to combine a bunch of sort of hodgepodge technologies together in order to create a seamless experience for the user or for the developer. And so this is sort of what Arlula is doing. The regulatory frameworks, the technological barriers, all those kinds of things are all different for different suppliers because everyone's doing it their own way. And what we're offering is a standard framework and format.
Now, it sounds like you have that framework and engineering behind the scenes in place, but you're still dealing with a lot of the, we'll call it, policies that the vendors are putting in place as well, that they haven't quite changed. What are you working? I'd say maybe my question is, um, what are the biggest struggles you have with the vendors, and that you wish they could change to help the culture of the industry evolve to the next level?
That's a good question. You know, I'm going to give the vendors a lot of credit here, actually, because a lot of the ones that we've chosen to work with have really leaned in. You know, at first they go, "Oh, who's this Alula?" You know, we don't really know who they. You know, we're a startup with a 5-man team, so it's fair, right? But once they get to know us and they realize what we're trying to do, they're actually kind of positive. A lot of them, and the people we deal with inside of these organizations, the satellite operators, the individuals we deal with, they get it. All of them get it, and it's really frustrating for them not to be able to help us the way they want, because whether it's organizational policy or whether it's some other kind of framework that they're not in control of, means it's very hard for them to maybe get us exactly what we need to do our job. But to all of the vendors' credit, they're slowly changing. And a lot of that is to do with us constantly pushing and asking, and that kind of culture where we're trying to push onto these sort of incumbents. Newer guys, it's a lot easier because they realize that they need to be competitive in a new way, and if they're not, it's going to be hard for them to compete with, say, the likes of Planet or Maxar or Airbus, who have this giant archive, huge market reach. They're also brand names. People forget that they're like the Nike and Adidas of the EO world, and so it's hard to compete with them. When everyone knows what Airbus is, because you flew in a plane to a conference to start talking about EO, and then there's an Airbus satellite you're buying imagery from. That's huge industry inertia you have to overcome as a satellite operator. So the new satellite operators are getting very creative. They're leaning in with us because we're at the call. We're connecting them to a lot of new commercial customers that they probably wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. And so we're providing them feedback. We're providing them data and insights in some cases as well. So something that we're starting to roll out with certain satellite operators is essentially business intelligence insights for speculative tasking. So helping our satellite operators optimize their archives to get better insights. And so it's really a relationship where we're incentivized to connect both sides and make sure both sides have an amazing experience and get what they want. And so that's sort of what we're doing with new data products, with this technology that we've built and everything like that. It's really all designed to make sure both parties get the best possible outcome and get what they need, essentially. And so the satellite operators are starting to get it, I'd say. When we started, they were like, no way. But now they're definitely, some of them are just asking us for advice. Like, okay, so how should we approach it, this way or this way? We're considering rolling out a new product. What do you think? And so it's interesting to see the change, I'd say. And I think a lot of people, all the satellite operators are afraid of maybe having like a Kodak moment where they get like out innovated and they're sort of relegated to, I guess, like the sidelines. Because if you look at almost every industry report, the growing opportunity here is in the commercial space. The government defense will always be there and it'll always be huge, but the year on year commercial consumption of satellite imagery is growing, even though we have all these barriers in the industry. So that's got to tell you something. That was the biggest market signal to us. Like, oh, this is still growing hugely, regardless of how hard it is for people to access the data and how costly it is. So, we're like, no, we can build something, make it way better, and then hopefully the floodgates will open, is sort of our thinking.
Well, the supply is increasing, but not just the supply, it's also the realization of the value of imagery as well. And certain types of sensors, is helping to drive the costs down for everybody. Maybe not quite quick enough as we all hope it would, but it is starting to drive the price down quite a bit. I mean, there was a time when even an EO image, archive EO image costs thousands of dollars, just like the SAR does right now. But now it's driven into the hundreds of dollars, which is still a vast improvement than it was 10 years ago. So actually talking about prices for a second, when I think about API access, I think not ordering images one by one, but ordering images in bulk, allowing quick access to large amounts of imagery instead of having the painful process of cherry picking everything I want. And that opens up a new avenue where all of a sudden I have this, instead of a soda straw, I get the fire hose of potential imagery that I want. What are you working towards right now with price, or what do you hope to get for your business development strategy to allow your customers to be, cost effective with their bulk ordering desires?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So right now, we've negotiated access, or we've negotiated sort of a different pricing model with a consortium of our satellite operators. Not all of them, but a lot of them, who are now willing to sell their satellite imagery, their archive imagery, at 1 square kilometer minimum. So, traditionally, I don't need to tell your viewers this, but like 25 square kilometer MOQs were the norm. And now at Arlula, we've got them down to 1 square kilometer in a lot of cases. So instead of paying hundreds of dollars, like you mentioned, we're paying, our customers are paying like $10 for an image, right? And this sort of leads into that bulk ordering, right? Because our ideal customer is a customer that has many AOIs across the planet. We work with companies that have thousands of AOIs across the planet, and they need regular monitoring of those AOIs. That's ideal for a little. That's when an API makes a lot of sense, right? Because that's the fire hose you're talking about. If you're buying, if you need a couple acres of imagery, and there's 10,000 sites, that's when you need that fire hose. And so
and as opposed to where, so instead of a customer who is forced traditionally to order, perhaps are interested in a single agricultural farm or a single facility, and that maybe up to 1 to 5 square kilometers at most. Traditionally they've had to order a massive image that maybe is thousands of square kilometers, where they're not even using 98% of that image. And you just said it, that might be one spot out of maybe 100 spots around different areas of an entire region that they need imagery for, right?
Literally 100%. Yeah. And this is sort of is what is killing businesses, this kind of business model, because we're working with 3 different ag tech companies right now. I can talk about one, Actuary, and all of them have the same problem. They're all talking about needing, sub 1 square kilometer orders. And if you have to pay $300 to $500 per AOI, that's not you can't build a business around that, right? If you have 10,000 customers all around the world in 10,000 farms, there could be small holding farms in India. They could be, giant farms in Australia that are like, 2 million hectares or something like that. But doesn't matter. They all have different AOI requirements. And so you can't build a business around something that has such a large minimum order. And so up until recently, these companies literally weren't able to go and do this at scale with high resolution imagery. They had to use, Sentinel or Landsat, or they had to pay upfront, like, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is, to access some better kind of deal terms. But it wasn't pay as you go. It wasn't easy to access. It took months to negotiate those deals. And so, or it takes months to negotiate those deals. All of those are business inhibitors, right? And so, the fact that now these satellite operators are leaning in, starting to change, work with us to change the way that they're selling the imagery, at least through our API, it's literally transforming businesses. And that's so exciting to me. Because now you're unlocking all of these new potential use cases, just not in ag tech alone, outside of agriculture. Let's talk about other places as well. In mining, in environmentalism, or climate science, all these kinds of sectors, industries, disciplines as well are now starting to leverage this smaller MOQ, and it's really helping them unlock better insights. And so when we talk about scalability at Arlula, that's what we talk about. We talk about like the need to be flexible with imaging and data. It's not about necessarily buying a 5,000 square kilometer scene. That's scale in a different sense. When we still do that as well, but and we're working on technologies to improve that as well. But or to improve accessing such large scenes. But when we talk about we kind of mean it in sort of an elastic sense, where demand can go up and down, and different sites require different sizes of imagery. And so that's the scale we're talking about. I think that's the scale that's going to transform the industry as well.
Yeah, great. Now go back to some of the vendors here for a second. Who is currently in your reseller network?
Yeah, we've got about 8 providers, or eight archives we access right now. So the 2 free ones I mentioned already, Landsat, Sentinel. We provide multispectral data for both of them, and we're going to be increasing the kind of capacity and the kinds of data types we offer in the future as well for the Copernicus Sentinel program, and all the other bands that Landsat offers as well.
And what's great about the Landsat and Sentinel for a second is it gives your customers kind of a preview of what they can do with your APIs, a preview of what they can do with access to your platform, your framework, without necessarily have to to spend money on the bank, right? Because those are freely available government resources.
Exactly, it's 100% free to download and order a Landsat or a Sentinel image, and that really helps, I guess, people adopt the technology, because you got to think about it for a second as well. Like, the industry is really exciting right now, but I think what will be more exciting is if we got all the software developers, all the coders that do computer vision technology and object identification and recognition technologies to start consuming satellite imagery at scale. So turn those people into or educate them in GIS and geospatial. I think that would be really exciting. And right now, there's no really easy way for them to access satellite data. And so, I think what we need to do is go through the transformation that, I guess, the location or the GPS kind of industry has had already, where location data is so easily available, and people integrate it into applications all the time. How do we make the same thing happen for satellite imagery? I think this is sort of the path we need to go down. And so Sentinel and Landsat are critical in getting those people on board, because no developer is ever going to pay money for the first time they use the technology, just to see if it works or not. They need something free to access. And luckily, Sentinel and Landsat are such incredible resources in and of themselves that people are building apps out of them anyway. So it's a win-win there.
Try it before you buy. The last thing you want is to spend thousands of dollars and realize this is not going to work for me, but I just wasted.
Exactly. Literally, it's crazy, and that's why people aren't leaning into this technology and this data set so much. And before they go and try our other suppliers like 2180, Maxar, SI Imaging, Head Aerospace, LatConnect 60 as well. All these suppliers that we're working with right now, Space Will, and there's a bunch more suppliers that we're currently negotiating reseller agreements with as well. Before they try any of those, they're going to need this free data. And so the first integration, or when we launched our API, we only had Landsat on it for a while, and then we had SI. Then we had Maxar, then we got Sentinel, and we just it's this sort of integration process. And look at Arlula, right? If you want to know how hard it is to integrate with a particular operator, well, it's taking us months to do each one of these with our small team. If you've got a small team and you're trying to integrate every single one of these providers, it's going to take a long time as well.
Because you're not just establishing a relationship with each one of these vendors, you're also standardizing the imagery pipeline you get from these vendors, so that it's easier for your customers to access through a standardized formatted API, so they don't have to go through the trouble of trying to format all that imagery themselves from all the different vendors, right?
So technical standardization, I guess you could consider sort of two fronts, right? The integration play, so the pipe that you're building, and then you've also got the data side of standardization as well, which is something that we're just starting to work on now. And it's a really tricky beast, to be honest. But it's something that we're really excited to be doing because I think it's going to be so transformative for this industry. Analysis ready data standardized across every single supplier, or standardized as much as possible across every single supplier. The same pre-processing and post-processing algorithms run across, a Maxar and an SI imaging, and whatever other images will be there in the future. But having that all standardized, I think, so someone that wants to start doing analysis can. We've worked with customers before that could only use Maxar because, for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons is the fact that just, again, creating their algorithm to ingest a different kind of processed imagery is just too difficult. And so helping those customers, helping those users get access to more quality imagery is really important to us.
Excellent. So as we wrap up here, Sebastian, I actually want to ask you two final questions. The first one is there anything about Arlula that you would like that we haven't talked about, you'd like to let everybody know about? What's your any final words, any messages that you like to relay out there to the audience?
Yeah, I guess, we're talking a little bit about what we're doing for the future, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Go for it.
yeah.
What
So
are you doing for the future?
I guess like the API is one part of a much larger plan that we have and a much larger vision, right? The API does a lot for allowing people to access satellite imagery, but what we really need to start doing is working with the satellite operators, okay? And this is what we're starting to look into now. We're just starting to, I guess, launch products for satellite operators at the moment that are still sort of in alpha. But the whole idea is to create a seamless pipe between the operator's data set and the consumer of that data. So you can access, any pixel that they own instantly. That's what needs to happen. And by providing the operator with a series of tools and services that allow them to more effectively host their data, pre-process it, post-process it, pan sharpening, radiometric correction, all that kind of stuff, and then deliver it. That's going to be huge. And the way people are doing it now is very manual still. And what we're trying to do is provide a technology stack to new satellite operators and new entrants into the market to, drive efficiency and improve user experience 100x, right? That's the real aim here. So that's one part of it. And then the other part I spoke about before is sort of the business intelligence kind of stuff as well, where we're starting to look at how we could potentially help our satellite operators, the current ones we're working with, improve the data collection that they're doing. Where for part of what Arlula is a search engine, right? It allows you to query the latest satellite imagery over any point on the planet, and we're collecting all that search data, and we want to be able to go and provide better insights to satellite operators to help them improve their archives, where they should be capturing, and they're planning for that as well, because that's a really tricky problem to solve right now. Where should we take a picture? We've got all this capacity. Where do we take a picture in the best hopes of utilizing that data in the future? And so these are some of the big projects we're working on right now. And to be honest, they're really exciting because what we're creating here isn't just a marketplace, but now it's a web of infrastructure for Earth observation data, for planetary data. That's super exciting because once you have this efficiency, once you've reduced the cost of access down, then people are just going to be doing crazy things with it. I know it. It's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely exciting. And in some cases, this is compounding the concept of democratization of imagery in our industry, which is great. So, with that said, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in finding out more about Arlula?
Oh yeah, no,
Easier
absolutely.
question.
So I guess there's a few different things, if you just want to visit our website and have a poke around, that's www.arlula.com. Arlula is spelled Arlula. If you want to trial our beta version of a catalog browser as well. So you can start exploring the imagery we have on tap. You can visit api.arlula.com/catalog as well. And both of those should provide you with an experience to either understand the API in more depth or just start playing with satellite imagery and seeing what you get.
As it's an API, as it's in beta, is there a way for potential customers to provide feedback for you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are going to be trialing out any of our products and you have any feedback for us at all, please send feedback to hello@alula.com. That way, my entire team will be able to get it and start working on changing any things.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you, Sebastian, for coming on, talking about your company. It's very enlightening and reassuring to know that more companies are coming online, such as yourself, and helping innovate the industry like this, and bringing more creative services. Once again, democratization of the industry is great news. I'm glad all the imagery is not stovepipe behind big giant enterprise beasts like they were 10 years ago. So this
Yeah, it's definitely
is good to
changing.
hear.
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, I'm Adam Simmons here with Arlula's Sebastian, and this is another episode of Industry Limelight. Everybody, we'll talk to you next time.